When we think of sea level rise, we often see waves slamming into coastal areas and flooding houses.
But it will also work in an invisible way, paralysing towns and cities from underground. And Petone on Wellington's harbour has just 20 years to figure out a way to stop it.
Petone is about to get its feet wet. Scientists thought it had 50 years to deal with sea level rise, but new research shows the land here is sinking, and that drastically speeds up how quickly the water will rise.
It's incredibly vulnerable to changes in sea level. We only have 20 years, maybe less.
It'll impact a huge number of people and businesses, not just those at the water's edge, because just 30 centimetres of sea level rise is enough to incapacitate the town's stormwater system.
The drainage system is designed for today, but as sea level rises, that drainage system stops functioning as it's been designed to function. You get ponding behind the dunes, you get ponding in the streets, you get flooding that is perhaps something that most people aren't thinking about at the moment because it's out of sight, out of mind.
Under all the concrete and asphalt is a complex gravity-based drainage system which will need to be rethought and redesigned. But are people worried?
Well, clearly it's a worry. I am aware of the problems that we've got with climate change and rising sea levels, so yeah, it's on my mind.
20 to 30 years doesn't worry me so much, 5 to 10 might. We'd hope that the government and the council might have a plan to save us by then.
Oh, I'm not worried. I've been in Wellington, my whole life, and I haven't seen these sea levels rising in all that time.
Yes, we've taken it seriously for the last 30 years. We've moved from central Petone to up on the Western Hills.
Whether you believe it's happening or not, the council is planning for it. And it'll be eye-wateringly expensive to fix the underground stormwater pipes which keep this town running.
When it comes to infrastructure buried in the ground like that, we're talking tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. So in all places like this where you have limited budgets, you have to start doing the cost-benefit calculations.
The work has accelerated for a network of pipes that can cope with the rising sea, and to identify which areas will be hotspots or wet spots for flooding.
But it may well be the case that we simply cannot afford to protect everywhere.
Eventually, some will have to leave their homes and find drier, safer places to live. You might be thinking, well, I don't live in Petone or near the coast, so I'm fine. But the scientists say we don't get off the hook that easily. Even if the waves aren't lapping at your feet, they could be eroding a key piece of infrastructure near you. Eastbourne, for example, just around the waterfront, is relatively unscathed by sea level rise, but the only road in and out is in big trouble. This footage of the morning commute wasn't taken during a particularly big storm, certainly not what the scientists call an unusual weather event. It was just high tide.
You may think that you're living in an area that's resilient or protected from climate change, that's not going to be directly affected by sea level. But it might be that the road that you have to use to get to your house is highly exposed to the point where you can't actually get from your home to the shops, your home to the hospital, your home to your place of work.
Tim Nash and Richard Levy's new sea level rise study is telling us that the cities we imagined for the future need to become the cities of today, rebuilt to absorb water, not repel it.
Internationally, we talk about sponge cities. These have been talked about for decades, but they're now actually being built. In China, in Japan, in Europe, the storage potential of a city made of concrete is zilch or thereabouts, and so we've built pipes to get the water out. The idea of a sponge city is it takes up water. So in a city where you can plant trees and have vertical gardens on buildings, have low-lying areas like some of the big parks, which would have been concreted in the past, have been opened up for vegetation, and so the ground becomes the sponge.
It's an idea which could help Petone and the country's other low-lying areas adapt to sea level rise. But the only way to prevent it at a catastrophic level is to stop pumping CO2 into the atmosphere. And if you'd like to know what the sea level is doing where you live, you can head to the new tool online. It's at searise.nz/maps and click on For Public. However, as we mentioned, there has been so much interest in the site, it's been down most of the day, so perhaps have a look at it tomorrow.